I want to know everything there is to know about you.
Now I'm going to introduce me.
You must have spotted her by now. She's always there.
Don't I deserve love?
Somebody has to like me best.
I didn't steal the dress. It was a mistake.
It's not the dress, it's you. We've told you 1,000 times how to do your hair, but you never listen. You never wear the right clothes. You're fat. You listen to 70s music. This is the 90s. We'll listen to the baby animals.
Nirvana.
You bring us down, Muriel.
You embarrass us. I know I'm not normal, but I'm trying to change. I'm trying to become more like you, more of a...
It's too late.
But I can change.
You'll still be you.
Hello, and welcome to the Don't Know Her podcast. I'm Michael.
And I am Scott.
And those were the delicious sounds of Toni Collette in Muriel's wedding. And she is, very excitingly, someone you, the listeners, voted for us to talk about. I can't say I'm disappointed or surprised, because we asked you, out of an option of a few one-time Oscar nominees, who is the most deserving of more attention and more Oscar nominations, more everything in their career. And it's clear Toni Collette deserves all of that and more.
Oh, absolutely. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Well, given the chance, she could play either, because she's just that versatile.
Well, she has, and we just didn't know.
She probably has been a bird and a plane.
Did you see Spencer? There's a bird. She was the seagull in the lighthouse. I believe that to be true. Yeah, no, she is a real... I don't even... There's not many people like Toni Collette. And she's a perfect example for someone that we want to talk about. So this is a podcast, if you don't know.
What? This is a podcast?
This is a podcast about actors who deserve better. And Toni Collette definitely fits that. How she's only nominated for one Oscar, back for The Sixth Sense in 1999 or 2000. You are much more a stickler for actual Oscar years versus that ceremony year.
Yes.
But she has been so good in so many things, in so many different types of roles. She's always brilliant. I love her.
I think that's fair. She is such an intriguing presence in cinema. I think I've always thought she's great, and whenever I've seen her, I've thought she's great, but she's never really struck me as someone who I would consider to be one of my favourites. And at the beginning of the pandemic...
I have to stop you. I can't believe she's not one of your favourites.
Let me finish. Let me finish. At the start of the pandemic, we watched a few Toni Collette films. We decided we'd watch some of her, and we did.
That's true, yes, I forgot.
And it was a lovely time. And even then I was like, wow, oh gosh, she is so interesting. But then watching her this time with the focus on recording this podcast and really thinking about her in the films, what is she doing, what is she bringing, I've been completely bowled over this time. Like, she truly is as versatile an actor as we have.
Yeah, there's not many, like on stage, I feel lucky enough to have seen lots of actors be able to do loads of different parts in that way, but in film that feels almost like impossible. Toni Collette, and I guess one of the reasons why she's so celebrated and such a good actor and yet is not, you know, as famous as her contemporaries like, say, Cate Blanchett or Nicole Kidman or any of these people, or Julianne Moore, is because she immerses herself in the role. And that's where I see, like, Renée Zellweger really as the only person that kind of does that, Judy being an exception of where it's very important that it's Renée Zellweger playing that part because of her comeback and her all this.
Sure.
But Toni is, A, morphs into these characters, but then B is like the definition of a kind of an actor supporting other actors. She does so much with her face. Like me, like I'm here... Gurning.
She's such a gurning.
But she does that smiling, like her in Muriel's wedding, walking up that aisle. Little Miss Sunshine, where she's like, she's central to that family, but she's smiling away because her brother is teasing her husband, and she can't really verbally say what she wants. Even at the end of that really, really crap film with Steve Carell, The Way Back. Is that what it's called? The Way Back.
No, it is The Way Back.
Oh, The Way Back.
Is the depressing Peter Weir film.
Oh yeah, but even at the end of that, where she's like sitting at the front seat and she decides to go to the back, like she's doing all these things, but it's like she's responding to the other actors and not saying anything verbally, which kind of makes my job hard when I'm picking the clips for this. But when she does speak, obviously that's amazing too. But I just think she's just such a generous actor. I don't know if you get many people that would do a tiny scene in The Hours or Tammy, and also, then lead movies in the same. Like, she's a movie star and she's just one of the huge ensemble.
Yeah. I think so much must have been presented to Toni over the years, and obviously she's an incredibly busy performer, but she, I think, is making, more than maybe anyone we've spoken about before, she's definitely making choices for herself, even as busy as she is, and therefore choosing to be in the background or the forefront of a film in kind of equal measure almost. Yeah, I'm in love with Toni Collette. Not that I wasn't before. Maybe we were courting. And now we are in love. She's not in love with me.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a one-sided courtship. She's always been there. I hope I brought her up as a suggestion for us to watch during lockdown, because she is great.
You did. I would have never.
Okay. And she does, and just to talk about what you were saying about what she's offered, and she has, she turned down Bridget Jones's Diary. She didn't do that. She then is like, I don't care about the size of the part, it's the character. She talks, it's like she was a mother in The Sixth Sense when she was 25. She was choosing these complicated characters, and that's really, I guess, at the root of why she is so successful in terms of what her work and her portfolio, if you want to call it that sounds so formal. Could you put your portfolio on the table, Toni? Why she's so successful in what she's choosing to do, but why then she's not like, you know what, Todd Haynes, put me in Carol or Far From Here. I don't know, Cate Blanchett would not take that role in The Hours, I don't think. Maybe at that point in her career, but not at Toni's point in her career.
I think that's fair.
And I love Cate Blanchett, so that's no disrespect to her.
Never.
And I would never recast her in Carol, but my heart goes to Toni, because I'm like, just celebrate her more. Love her.
Love her. Where then was your first entry into Toni? When did you first encounter your first entry? That's absolutely disgusting. I'm so sorry.
This is not a lads podcast. Where's my? I think so. When I was coming in, when I was really falling in love with film, The Sixth Sense was such a big deal. So I would have watched that, and that would have been my first, really acknowledging who this woman is. And it was such a, and we'll talk about The Sixth Sense in more detail, but it's such a accessible film that it worked on such a big level for, that's 1999, was it? So, or 2000? So that I would have been 12, 13.
Yeah.
And I remember us getting it, it was almost as if we were watching the Carrie or Chainsaw Massacre or something, something this is frightening and there's a twist. And I remember it ending, and I was like, this performance, I was in love. Of course a little gay boy is going to be like, oh my God, the mother. Mommy. It's the mother. It's the outcast mother that I'm obsessed with. And then it clearly just built very quickly from that point on, because she had so much work at that point already for someone to easily fall in love with, particularly if they wanted to get involved in or get interested in cinema.
Get entry into her.
What about you?
I'm sure it was The Sixth Sense. I couldn't work this one out actually, but looking back, I reckon it was The Sixth Sense. However, I imagine it's maybe more likely that Little Miss Sunshine is the first time I specifically noticed her. I definitely saw The Sixth Sense first, but I think it was Little Miss Sunshine that I watched. And
such a baby.
Yeah, that's where I was like, the mother who? Bruce Willis and child, and he sees dead people. But I remember her. I've only seen Little Miss Sunshine once, and it was a long time ago, and I remember her vividly in it. So I think that was the first time.
Yeah, there's so many. Like, I remember the first time I've seen a lot of her movies. I know that's a different way to answer the question that you didn't ask me.
Yeah, exactly.
But she's just so memorable. So it is hard then to think, oh, yeah, at what point was the first time I ever saw her?
Yeah, fair. All right, shall I give us a little rundown into the career thus far of
Please do.
life and
I
career
dare you.
of Miss Toni Collette? Okie doke. So, Toni was born on the 1st of September 1972 in Sydney, Australia. Her mother was a customer service representative and her father a truck driver. And then something that was interesting that I found from that is while she starred on an episode of Who Do You Think You Are, she learned that her grandfather, her father's father, was not whom she thought. And instead perhaps a Navy officer stationed in Australia during World War II was actually her biological grandfather. Very interesting stuff. Although who specifically it is it him or not, has not yet been confirmed. Colette's first acting role was in a high school performance of Godspell. She auditioned by singing Whitney's Saving All My Love for You.
Oh, if that was recorded, I would give anything to watch that.
I mean, wow, wouldn't we all? In 1989, at the age of 16, she transferred to the Australian Theatre for Young People, choosing acting, which she loved, over school, which she didn't. It was here that she returned the extra E to the end of her surname, which her non-biological grandfather, which we have previously mentioned, had previously removed. And of course, with the E, it sounds much cooler than Colette. Colette. I think I'd go the same way. She then went to the National Institute of Dramatic Art in 1991, before leaving a couple of years later to star alongside Geoffrey Rush in a production of Uncle Vanya. She continued to work with Rush, amongst others, in a series of other theatre productions over the next few years, in things such as A Little Night Music. Sorry!
Sondheim.
Messing up my Sondheim. Sorry, Sondheim. A Little Night Music. And King Lear. There's nothing light about the music in A Little Night Music.
What part did she play in King Lear, do you know?
She played Simona. Does that make sense?
It must be a maid or something. I don't know, actually.
I have no idea. I remember she played Simona somewhere. It's in something.
She played Simona somewhere.
Someone called Simona. Sorry.
That'd be a great title for a film.
Shakespeare scholar. Someone called Simona somewhere. Colette's first professional acting gig was in 1990 in a TV show called A Country Practice. Her feature film debut then came alongside Anthony Hopkins, Russell Crowe and Ben Mendelsohn in Spotswood, which is also known as the efficiency expert for our US listeners. In 1992, this is what brought her big breakthrough as the titular Muriel in the iconic Australian film Muriel's Wedding. From here, she had a string of other significant parts in the likes of Cossie, Lillian's Story, and Emma, all from 1996, before she racked up parts in the likes of Clock Watchers, The Boys, and Todd Haynes' fantastic Velvet Goldmine in the subsequent years. In 1999, that is when we get The Sixth Sense, which earned her only, so far, Oscar nomination, hence her inclusion in this miniseries. In 2000, she made her Broadway debut in The Wild Party, for which she was nominated for a Tony Award. But more interestingly, as you earlier pointed out, it was during this that she had a clash, which means she turned down the role of Bridget Jones. Wow. From here, she continues to work very consistently. She's a very, very busy woman. In the likes of The Hours, About a Boy, Little Miss Sunshine, In Her Shoes, Japanese Stories, The Last Shot, and the greatest film of all time, Connie and Carla. It was.
I love Connie and Carla.
Are you sure? It was around the time of these films in the late noughties that she began working in The United States of Tara, which is a very successful TV show where she played the titular lead, who was a character dealing with dissociative identity disorder, which won her an Emmy and a Golden Globe. Other notable roles kind of around then include the animation Mary and Max, The Way, Way Back, Enough Said, which we love, and Krampus. 2018 then brings along her unforgettable turn in Hereditary, which then leads into her other most recent turns in the TV series Unbelievable, and then the horse drama Dream Horse, and most recently Guillermo del Toro's Nightmare Alley. Doesn't stop there though, Colette a woman of many talents, is also a singer-songwriter, most significantly displayed when she formed her band, Toni Collette and The Finish, which Michael was very kindly playing as I arrived here this evening. Although sadly she hasn't put out any new material since 2007. So that's a little insight into Miss Toni Collette.
Where do we start? Where do we start with Toni? I feel like Muriel's wedding is the best way.
I think so.
Muriel is...
You're terrible, Muriel.
Muriel's wedding is a film which feels like part of the fabric of my perspective on life, if that makes sense. But just because a lot of people I know and love have watched it, it's like a touch point in a joke. Like in my family, we'll make jokes about, oh, what a coincidence if someone turns up at a dinner, which for those in the know in the film is when Muriel's father's mistress keeps turning up at dinner tables, and it's not a coincidence at all. But yeah. And like a rundown of the story, Muriel is a character who we meet. She's just been arrested at a wedding. She has stolen a dress. Her dad, who is kind of a jack of all trades, sort of like smooth talker sort of person, brilliantly played by Bill Hunter. He gets her off, he bribes the
What a great
That's a different... You get your mind out of the gutter this episode. He pays off the policeman with just basically a few cans of beer.
Yeah.
She listens to ABBA to get through her very sad life. Her friends, inverted commas, treat her like shit. Her family treat her like shit.
After she failed high school, I get her into a secretarial course run by a mate of mine. $300 a term. 2 years, $2,000. She comes out, she can't even type.
I could type.
Then I get her a job at my solicitor's. After a month, Stevie Mason rings up and says he'll have to let her go. Because she can't type.
If I couldn't type, why did they give me my secretarial diploma?
Because I paid for it.
Everyone's treating her like shit. Nobody expects anything of her. And she... Long story short, meets somebody she went to school with, played by Rachel Griffiths, and she finds somebody who believes in her, albeit believes in her because she's telling lies, and she kind of gets this support mechanism and finds her feet.
Sometimes I think I'm nothing. Useless.
You're not nothing, Muriel. You're amazing. Remember how you were in school? You were so quiet you could hardly talk. You were too shy to look at people. Now you're a success, and someone wants to marry you. You're not nothing, Muriel. You've made it.
In other hands, it might have been really kind of despicable sort of behaviour, and yet there's something about this movie that I anyway find incredibly endearing and find a lot to empathise with Muriel. And I think Toni Collette gives such an amazing performance in this movie. I think it's a film full of really well judged performances, because there's a lot of really over the top, the group of girlfriends she has that actually hate each other and hate Muriel. They're all doing a very broad thing, but they're very, very funny. Then you have her mother, who's doing quite a very somber, but also kind of one note in some ways what the mother's doing. It's a very sad part of the film, but it's Toni that anchors it all. And to see her transformation from this sort of you can see her like a teenager who's lazy, doesn't have much motivation, sitting around, to the woman she becomes at the end when she's fresh. She looks fresh and glowing, and she's a woman at this point. And all of it, I just love it. I could talk about this film in any angle, any day.
But on the other hand, okay, let's talk about my journey with Muriel's Wedding. So I first watched Muriel's Wedding during the pandemic, near the very beginning of the pandemic. And I must preface this by saying I wasn't having a great day, I don't think. I'm not saying it was some terrible, terrible day, but I wasn't having the most spectacular of days. And my housemate suggested watching Muriel's Wedding, and I was like, oh yes, I've always meant to watch it, and I'm sure that film's going to be an absolute delight. Perfect. Sit me down, let's do this. And Muriel's Wedding is full of the most loathsome people you could encounter on film in many ways. So therefore it went completely against what I was expecting, and I came out being like, oh, God, I feel even more miserable than when I went in. So I really didn't like it. But people get very upset when I say that.
No, and just to, like, what is there some, like, Muriel specifically, like, that character and her journey, like, is it, because, like, what I've just said, I guess, that I find it endearing even though she's behaving in such a despicable way. Would you include her in, like, the loathsome characters?
So the first time I watched it, I would have included her. And
this is when Scott left the podcast. No, I'm joking. No, because I think you're totally right. And this is the thing which I find, and I'm rewatching it again for this, knowing how you felt about it. It's like, how is it possible to like this character so much?
Yeah, exactly. It was, she frustrated me no end. And I think that's great. And it's okay, so then spoiler alert, it was just a subject of feeling in a bad mood and looking for something to cheer me up and having the wrong idea of what this film was. I knew it involved Toni Collette and a lot of ABBA music, and I was like, well, how can this not be a delight? This time around, I thought it was pretty brilliant.
Yay!
and for exactly what you're saying. So she is endearing despite her many flaws. The rest of the cast, with the exception of Rachel Griffiths' character, are pretty awful, but it is very, very funny to look on at them being this way.
Because they're left in this shit that they're creating for themselves, which I guess that's why it works. I don't know. Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No. Well, that's it. That is why it works. It's incredibly funny. And I think we sort of touched on this last time when we were talking about Stalker Channing and expectations with films and me rewatching 6 Degrees of Separation. I don't think I had quite the turnaround there that I did on this one, because I really, really didn't like it. I found it quite painful. Whereas this time I understood why I found it painful, but I enjoyed it for those things and found it especially funny for those things. I think there's still things that are very interesting about it. I mean, it is sad. There's a lot of sadness in the film around all of the things that are very funny. And sometimes I don't know why it goes for being quite so hopeless at times. But ultimately, it is hopeful. And ultimately, it is encouraging. I think there are just moments, the kind of, should we call it the fate of the mother's character in it. I'm like... in the moment that happened in the film, I was like, why? But then you see the film out and you're like, okay, I can see kind of it being a catalyst for moving Muriel's journey along even further. But Toni Collette is fucking brilliant. She is so good. I am not surprised for a second that this is what launched her career. And as we'll go through everything, I mean, I could say it every single time. We've already said it in the beginning of how versatile she is. The woman playing the character of Muriel here is not the same woman who's playing the mother in The Sixth Sense. It is so well judged. It is heaven, and she kind of, like the best of performers, is quite happy to throw vanity out the window in pursuit of something which is ultimately an incredibly inspiring portrayal of a woman.
Yeah, I mean, this story, so it's what, 30 years old, and it hasn't, like, it obviously there's age parts to it, but there's something about it which still, I don't know, about a woman that hasn't been given anything. Like, her, all that she's kind of been told she can do is, you know, she goes to a secretary course, and then it's like marriage. Like, these are the things, and she's just obsessed with this idea of marriage, and you buy it. Like, you believe this woman is just like, okay, these are the things that I need. I mean, it's not dealt with in the most sort of what's the word, like, detailed sort of way. It's not a drama. It's not trying to go for that sort of level. But where it is like this woman trying to find her kind of standing in society. So like those girls saying like find people on your own level, and like telling her to fuck off. Then meeting Rachel Griffiths, who is celebrating her because she's engaged. Like that's why Rachel Griffiths is celebrating her. And then like going and moving to Sydney and trying on these dresses, pretending all these things, getting married and for a sham wedding, and enjoying every moment of it just because everybody's telling her like you're part of it.
The way they picked on me in Pauper Spit, saying I wouldn't amount to anything, and here I am, famous, and they're at my wedding. I showed them.
Showed them what?
I'm as good as they are.
Is still relevant today, as is the ending, which, I mean, I guess it's not a spoiler that this would go there, but that she is like, no, I don't need any of this. It's just me that needs to accept myself. I don't need all of these people who have, like, kicked me down to celebrate me. And the thing about Toni Collette, she's just able to make all of that feel really genuine all the time. Like, she could be... There's some very funny moments, and she's very like brilliant comedian, but then she can find like the pathos in it, they just like within a few seconds. Yeah, I mean this is one of the best comedy performances ever. When I was looking at the awards that it was nominated for or whatever, I was like, why didn't she win the Golden Globe? She lost the Golden Globe for musical comedy to Nicole Kidman in To Die For, which is absolutely one of my favorite performances.
That's tricky.
And then that Oscar year, like neither Nicole Kidman or Toni Collette were nominated for the Oscar. It was just such a that's the year of Susan Sarandon winning for Dead Men Walking, which I would in a heartbeat choose Toni or Nicole over. But it was just such a crazy year. Like I truly believe in some other year she would have been nominated. She definitely would have won the Globe. But yeah, if anyone was to be like, oh, I don't know what about Toni Collette and like if she's a good actor, like just watch Muriel's Wedding because it's all in this one performance.
But go into it knowing that it's not the happiest film of all time, even though there are very joyful moments. It's an ode to the delusional, perhaps, or it's just an ode to the people who manage to see past the bullshit of life and don't care to be kind of bound up and tied down by things and choose to just...
Well, in this kind of world, like she's like, it could be easily an influencer. Like how many influencers or whoever online are doing something to camera and then off camera they have a whole different life. Like Muriel's Wedding has such a, whatever it hits upon is just so like accurate on life. I dread that they would remake Muriel's Wedding and they'd do it as an influencer, but it makes sense that character would be like that and would get away with it. She steals. She does everything that you, apart from murder. She pretty much does most awful things you could expect of someone.
Yeah. Oh,
we love her.
Muriel. You're terrible, Muriel.
And then okay, let's go to the Oscar nominated role then.
Yes, I think so.
So, The Sixth Sense. I don't know. Like The Sixth Sense seems like one of those movies which has been talked about so much. Yeah. Perhaps not really from Toni Collette, Toni's performance, which is wild when rewatching it for this year. Like as I said earlier, like as a kid I was in love with it, but that often happens that I'm like, oh my god, I love the female character, I love the mother. But this time I was like, God, she and Haley Joel Osment are just so good in this movie, which if people do not know, is a story of a little boy who is being... what would you say, like, traumatized? Or not traumatized, but he's being visited by dead people.
Yeah.
And he's finding it, like, it's a burden. And he meets Bruce Willis, a child psychologist. Is he a child psychologist or a psychologist?
Specifically a child psychologist, yeah.
And who's having a kind of a cold reception from his wife. I don't know if I can spoil the twist anyway. And Toni Collette plays Haley Joel Osment's mother, who is also suffering her own grief and dealing with her own sense of I don't know, like, not overcoming something, but she's struggling. You know, she's a single mother. The other parents and other people that we see around her kind of look down on her because she's a bit tacky. You probably know the accent better than me. It seems so specific. Well, she's got these big nails. She has this broad accent. Or Brooklyn accent. But it's different to the other people. I don't know enough about New York to identify. But she's definitely styled to be looked down by the other characters. And she's emotionally raw. Like, it's such a heavy movie. I feel like when I'm watching it now, I'm like, God, as a 12, 13-year-old, I'm just not sure, like, what I got out of it in the same way as now. I know I enjoyed it. I vividly remember the door. So Haley Joel Osment goes to a party and it's kind of like forced fun. And I guess as a kid, I would have identified with that too, being like, have to have fun with these people. Particularly, like, I didn't want to hang out with the boys, play football or whatever, but you're going to their party. I was never locked in a cabinet or whatever, but Haley Joel Osment's locked in a cabinet and is really getting frightened. And Toni Collette tries to open the door, but they're both doing it from either side, so they can't until he faints, and she opens it and she carries him out and brings him to the doctor. It's horrific. Like, that is...
Yeah.
But there's so many great scenes with her. It does not... Well, it surprised me she's been Oscar nominated one time. But in general, I'm really grateful this performance is nominated in a horror-type movie. And that The Sixth Sense was celebrated, which stands up today, I'd say.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it is so iconic. I don't know if that is just for specific lines. I think a lot of it is that, but it's terrific. It is a really, really good film, and it stands up very well. But it is like you're saying, ripe in atmosphere. It's heavy, and it's quite profoundly upsetting, like you say. But it's all approached in this very Hollywood way, which is no bad thing. I think the score and the tone and just the approach to telling this story feels very much of its time, but in a way which feels, I don't know, comforting in a strange way, where I don't think this film is necessarily comforting, but something about it, it feels very kind of handsomely mounted in a way that I think it kind of keeps you, and I think you almost feel safe going with it, even though from the get-go you're a bit like, I don't know what I'm going to get from this. It is a really terrific film. Haley Joel Osment is amazing in this film, but he was as good as child actors have ever been on screen. But it is her in it which is the kind of heart of it. I think when you first see her enter the film, you start to think, oh no, she's going to be that kind of absent mother. She's not going to be there for her. She's kind of, you see her sort of buttoning up like a shiny blouse almost. That's the first point you see her, and kind of fluffing her hair. And I don't know, which is bad, that I was thinking like, oh no, even though I've seen it before, being like, oh no, like here she goes, like she's just not there for him. But then she goes into the same room as him, and from there you're like, oh no, she's incredibly maternal, she's very warm. And therefore I think she's doing a really interesting balancing act with this part, like she always does. But here is a really good example of amazing work that she rightly was nominated for at the Oscars. Perhaps justifiably you could say she should have won. It was quite a strong year. Angelina Jolie won for Girl Interrupted, and she's very good in that. But I would argue that I think Toni's the strongest of the lineup. But specifically, she's not in the film a huge amount, but where she is there, her impact is really significant. And there's a scene at the end of the film where she completely floors you.
She said you came to the place where they buried her. Asked her a question. She said the answer is every day. What did you ask?
Do I make her proud?
but it's also because of the writing and how the scene is directed. You think it's going to be this last minute kind of point of conflict, and actually it's a really wonderful moment between mother and son, and her reflecting on her past and having, a moment of realizing that something that she has felt so sad about all of her life actually wasn't the case, and how she handles it is very, very beautiful.
Yeah, and she does that, like earlier in the film, she says something along the lines of,
God, I am so tired, Cole. I'm tired in my body. I'm tired in my mind. I'm tired in my heart. I need some help.
She's at the end of her tether, essentially. I think she's just so ready to have this breakdown or something. I don't know, but you're right. But so the ending, or that scene in the car that you're referring to, does, like, this, she's getting closure. So I for whatever reason, watching it now, I'm like, that gives me closure on a film that I would have had more open-ended, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's like people grieving is necessary, which is also including, spoiler alert, Olivia Wilde.
Wild.
Is it Olivia Wilde?
No.
Wilde. No, it isn't Olivia Wilde. It's not Olivia Colman. Who's the other one that was in? Olivia Williams. Sorry. So it's like people that you like. Grieving is important, and it's like, all that. Grieving basically needs its space.
Yeah.
But you do move on. Like, you live. You go with your life, and I just think that moment, it just elevates the whole film. She's just so good in it, and it's like, with that accent and the hair and everything, it could have been just not as genuine as it does feel like. It's brilliant.
Well, no, exactly, because I think because the film ultimately does tie everything up with this little bow in ways that kind of maybe more ambitious horror with a message type films perhaps wouldn't. I think it's necessary here for exactly what you're saying. It's about grief, it's about managing grief, and it's giving these characters what they deserve, so it's very cathartic. And therefore, although it feels quite Hollywood, it's, I don't know, I think it earns how it chooses to end, which you might not necessarily say about other M. Night Shyamalan films, where he in here it is a twist film, but other ones it doesn't feel deserved. In this, it does actually earn what it is doing.
And okay, so let's stay on this horror track,
Yeah.
horror mother-son track. A film which she was not nominated for an Oscar for, but incredibly was, like, I cannot think of another performance, although we've just had Ruth Negga be ignored for passing, which to me is another incredible performance. But Toni Collette in Hereditary is just, like, outstanding. Like Lupita Nyong'o in Us, or Alfre Woodard, who we've talked about before, in Clemency. Like, there's all this kind of, these people and these performances, but Hereditary, I don't know how, like, I just do not know how you watch this movie, or even a clip of it, and not think this woman is as good as you get.
Yeah. Yes, it's unbelievable what she's doing in this. I laugh. The film is fucking terrifying, but it is... the journey again. I mean, like, who is this woman? I don't know. Toni Collette, of course it is, but it's just because she becomes this character.
And she's, like, so simple. Like, she's grieving as well. So we open on, she's at her mother's funeral, and she's talking about her mother.
You could always count on her to always have the answer. And if she ever was mistaken, well, that was your opinion, and you were wrong.
Toni had a very difficult relationship, or Toni's character had a very difficult relationship with her on-screen mother. I don't want to be misquoted as saying that Toni Collette and her real-life mother have a problem. But there's, like, this real, like, awful, like, the whole film is painful. This opening sets up that tone, and you just, like, it's so different. It's miles away from The Sixth Sense, which easily could have felt the same. She is grieving, but in a way that's, like, almost as if, like, trying to purge anger or something, like it's not comfortable for the character, for us, for anybody, for her family around her. It has outbursts with her son, and like, the story from that point on, the son goes on a drive with the daughter, something happens, and it causes this sort of resentment, pain, frustration to explode almost in a quiet way at first, and then properly take over Tony's character's life. You've Anne Dowd, who you never want to meet, I don't think, in a movie. She's bad news. She's gonna something bad's gonna happen. If she wants to hug you in a car park, run. And you've Gabriel Byrne as the husband, and you've brilliant Alex even Wolf as the son.
Oh my god, he's so good.
He's so good.
All of that. Why are Oscars or any awards not acknowledging horror performances more? Oh my god, Alex Wolff in this is so good.
And that scene at the dinner table, which I feel like it's online an awful lot. I've even seen a brilliant drag queen do a performance to it. Oh my god. When Tony, it's like bubbling, it's like, they're sitting at the table and you can tell like these two people have so much pain and hurt and anger and all these different quite complex emotions, and the way that it comes out.
Just seems like there might be something you want to say.
Yeah.
Like what? I mean, why would I want to say something so I could watch you sneer at me?
Sneer at you? I don't ever sneer at you.
Oh, sweetie, you don't have to. You get your point across.
Okay, so fine, then say what you want to say then.
Peter.
I don't want to say anything. I've tried saying
Okay, so
things.
try again. Release yourself.
Oh, release you mean?
Yeah, fine, release me. Just say it. Just fucking say it.
Don't you swear at me, you little shit! Don't you ever raise your voice at me! I am your mother! Do you understand? All I do is worry and slave and defend you, and all I get back is that fucking face on your face!
Toxic, like she's standing, she's looking at it. Her face, it looks like with her anger, it's about to like go on top of him, like she's going to tear him apart. And that man, he just sat there taking it in and trying to stand up for himself. Gabriel Byrne's just not sure what to do. Typical Irishman.
Come on.
It's like, but it's enough. That's all he says. It's all just the atmosphere of this movie.
Yeah.
I will say I don't like the film. I get a lot out of it creatively, and I love Midsommar, which is Ari Aster, who had who wrote and directed both Hereditary and Midsommar. But Hereditary, I find I do not get any joy out of it apart from her performance. About the performances and all that, I just find it too painful. Like I find it a real like what is the point? Like this is someone who loves, say, Melancholia from Lars von Trier or Dance in the Dark, but I find this film too heavy.
Yeah, it is heavy. It is entirely. It's heavy from the moment we are joined.
We open at a funeral.
Yeah, and it doesn't let up from there. So I think that's fair. I think it's fair to say you don't like this film. But I appreciate it. That's good. I kind of struggle where people really can't see the value in it. And there are some critics, aka Mark Kermode, who thinks it's a bad film. That's the thing I will always have with looking at films, to go for hate when there is obvious value. I hate that take on it, and I think it's bogus, and I think it's a lie to go that way. And I've told of many people in the past for doing such a thing. So, but it is, you feel the shifts in this film. And you were saying the dinner table scene, holy shit, it is there's a monster coming out of her. I love what you're saying about it. It is landing. You can feel it landing on him. It's so there. But every shift, there's moments where the shift in her is very obvious, but she still plays it well. Her eyes go from one character to another. She plays about 3 or 4 different people, but one person in this film. And I think a lot of it, and this is very much in the writing and direction and approach to it, but also in her performance, it's taking a lot from The Shining, I think. It's the kind of frozen. There's a moment where she is it's stuck on her, shaking uncontrollably, and it's so unnerving, but it's really similar to Danny Torrance in The Shining, the kid, shaking with fear, and it just keeps cutting to him being frozen almost. And that happens with her and other characters in this film. And it is that rhythm and choreography of it. It makes it terrifying. It's so unnatural and unnerving. There's moments at the end, the kind of more obvious horror elements which happen in, say, the final 20 minutes of the film, but I still think they are staged in a way which is as terrifying as anything in horror because it is so unnatural. There's a scene of... Oh, I don't want to spoil it, but say you see a character, I won't say if it's her or someone else, in the back of a shot, moving in a way which is so abnormal, and it really just sits with me and I can't shake it. So I think Hereditary is brilliant. I really, really do. I'm not sure about all of its choices, but I think Ari Aster, the director, is peculiar, and I think he chooses to hang on moments which are quite uncomfortable. And maybe that says a lot about him as a person, I don't know. But I find it fascinating, and I like what he's doing, and I'm always excited to see what's next.
Oh yeah, I would not be a friend of Ari Aster. I put him and like Robert Eggers in a similar, like, don't want to go to a dinner party with them. Are you okay, hon?
Yeah.
And now, like, okay, I really want to talk about this movie because I rewatched it thinking, oh, this is just not... This is something maybe we'll touch upon, and there's bigger roles that we will fit in before we move on to the quiz and stuff. But Japanese Story. So this is from a director called Sue Brooks, who's Australian, and it's this beautiful movie which we and I, as a Toni Collette fan, forcing us to watch these films in lockdown. That was the first time I'd seen it, was when we watched it for that. And I rewatched it for this, and I was blown away. Like, I just think this is such a gorgeous film. So Toni Collette plays this woman who's like, you know, an everyday person. She's like just going through her day, and she's told, okay, we have this Japanese this Japanese potential investor, and we were going to show him around together, but you're just going to show him around. And she is pissed off about this from the off. Yeah. Like, she doesn't speak any Japanese. She meets this man, and he's standing there with his bag, and he's, you know, not accustomed to her sort of like, okay, get in now. Like, he kind of, I think he expected someone to be collecting him with a chauffeur and all this, and that's how he treats her from that point on. So she puts his bag in the car, he gets in the back seat, she's in the front. And the film at the start is quite awkward in its the terminology it uses around Japanese people. Mm-hmm. And then it balances out when you meet this character that comes into her life, who is translated to when he's talking on the phone of what he's saying about her. And it's this sort of like, he's as frustrated with her as she is with him. And it's basically a film that reminds me of something like Brief Encounter, or these sorts of like, this love which is like, it doesn't make sense on paper for two characters coming together to just, you know, not enforced fun, but just to have to be in kind of intense situation. And it is beautiful. I don't want to say any more because the film's journey is just so gorgeous. But yes, I highly recommend this film.
Yeah. Yes, it's a unique journey to have gone on, and I'm glad to have seen it.
But let's go back to Her Mother. It's Little Miss Sunshine because it was such a big Oscar film, and it got 2 actor nominations, and I bet like Toni was nominated for, wasn't it the BAFTA and the Golden Globe for that?
I think so.
So she surely was close to being, well, she was in the conversation, was close to making that lineup. And Little Miss Sunshine is a movie which I'm really glad I saw say the Oscar fanfare, because it was a little movie that could, and about this family who are really dysfunctional. I understand that it like is in so many ways kind of definition of an American independent movie, but I love it. Like, I have so much love for this film, and again, it's a film which a lot of people I love and know have like love it as much as me, and it's like a touch point. And Toni in it is just so good.
How did it happen?
How did what happen?
Your accident.
Honey, here.
Oh, no. It's okay. Unless you object.
No, I'm pro honesty here. I just think, you know, it's up to you.
Be my guest.
Olive, Uncle Frank didn't really have an accident. What happened was he tried to kill himself.
You did?
Like, it is a true ensemble film. So you've Greg Kinnear as her husband, Abigail Breslin, her daughter, Alan Arkin, her father-in-law, Steve Carell, her brother who has just tried to commit suicide, Paul Dano, her son from another marriage, so not Greg Kinnear's son. And I feel like I'm making up another character. I guess the bus. There isn't anyone else, is there?
I think you said it.
And they just all have their own, like, they're fully developed in their own way, and they come together. And Toni Collette, of all of them, probably has the least bit of, like, arc, and yet she's the most present in each of their arcs, almost. She's so good.
Yeah, she's incredibly natural in this film, but they all are. I think this ensemble is a really terrific ensemble, and again, I think playing mothers comes incredibly naturally to her, and that's not an easy thing to say, because there's plenty of actresses I love who play mothers and I don't necessarily buy it. With Toni, I can see in any of these, regardless of what kind of mother she's playing, because she's played very, very different ones. She is sunshine in Little Miss Sunshine.
Yeah, and she's the one that gets the phone call when they're at the dinner table to be like, your daughter, she's in this beauty pageant, you got to go cross country, you have to get. She's like, okay, how are we going to do it? Like, they're having all this kind of stress. They get in the van. She's driving for most of it, which I think is quite rare to see a female character with like men around her driving this kind of big van. And then, yeah, she's just wonderful, and she gets so much joy out of her family, and I think that's something that's really glorious. Yeah, she's wonderful.
She is wonderful.
I also would have nominated her, and think this is another performance which really does shock me to think that she's done it, is About a Boy.
Yeah, again, lost in it. So About a Boy is another film I only watched for the first time during the past couple of years, post-COVID world. But I had seen it, it was always on TV, I'd seen bits of it, and again, I never clocked necessarily that it was her, again, because she's just so lost in the part. It's wonderful. About a Boy being about, so Hugh Grant is a...
Yeah, well, he's inherited like the music license of a Christmas song, and he kind of lives like a bachelor. I think his age was really scarily close to mine, which I find that really triggering in a movie. Isn't he like 30-something?
That actually really throws me as well. God, how interesting.
Anyway, it was said at the beginning, because he's like tried to say like, oh, you can be the godfather to our child. He's like, oh, no, don't do that. He's like, oh, I'd do like to be awful, and then when she turns 18, I'd take her out for a drink and try and sleep with her.
So, yeah, he's this privileged rotter, and then this young kind of bullied child turns up and finds his way in his life and going round to his house, and they have these conversations and form kind of an odd couple relationship. Odd couple in the movie sense. They don't become a couple.
Although, in an amazing scene, Toni Collette arrives at this very swanky restaurant and is like,
well, I was just wondering why a single childless man would want to hang out with a 12-year-old boy every day.
Wait a minute, you didn't tell your mum that you've been coming round?
I think I forgot.
Tell me what? What are you doing with my son?
Wait a minute, what exactly are you suggesting here?
Well, I'm not suggesting anything.
Well, I think you are. I think you were suggesting that I've been interfering with your son.
I'm simply asking you why you entertain 12-year-olds in your flat.
And then, which I guess I always thought she was brilliant About a Boy, and I haven't seen it for years, but then watching it, I was like, yes, how smart to utilize her acting and her in this way, because she then, at the end of this scene, turns it around. It's like,
what are you going to do about it?
Oh, I'm not going to do anything. He's none of my business.
Oh, God, you're a selfish bastard.
Yeah, that's what I keep telling him. He always puts himself first.
But I'm on my own. It's just me. I'm not putting myself first because there's nobody else.
Yes, there is. There's Marcus. You're involved now. He keeps coming around your bloody house.
And even though she doesn't like him personally, she sees the benefit of him. Yeah. And she learns herself through him. So she, at the early in the film attempts suicide in a very sort of like matter-of-fact sort of way, which I think this film is very good. Better than I remembered it too, I would say. But she goes on a journey, such like she's a vegan and she's all these things. She's hippie. Back at the time where these sorts of characteristics were really seen as wild. But she plays it quite, naturalistically for someone that is very visually quite out there, including an amazing Yeti-esque costume, as Hugh Grant says. But anyway, she at the end is like, do you want to go to McDonald's, to her son? And she's like embracing like he has an identity and he's different. And it's just because she believes these things, he needs to find himself too. And she's a better person as well as regardless of being a mother, for that learning, which Hugh Grant in a really backwards way has shown her. I love this movie, but I love her. I wouldn't have been angry if Hugh Grant was nominated for an Oscar either.
No. It is a special film. But I think it works exactly. They're using Toni Collette in the best way. It's funny, and she's playing against Hugh Grant in that scene you're talking about, which is the best scene in the film. It's so good. Being sort of like, oh, what's going on? And kind of goofy and silly and playing it a little more for laughs. But the reason she is so funny and elevates the scene is because she's playing it very earnestly and she means it and she means everything she's saying. It's so good. She's a troubled character, but she's smart, she's interesting, she's defiant, and so lovable, even with the kind of trickier, pricklier side of who she is. And not many people could do that, and she does it really beautifully. It's really, really touching. It's a sweet, sweet film.
Okay, before we go and move on to the quiz and everything, there's one film... Well, actually, you might want to talk about another, but there's one film I desperately want to talk about, because this is as emotionally as, like, important. I don't want to say important, but it's just gets me every time. It's In Her Shoes, which is... I honestly cannot understand how this movie is not a bigger thing. Like, to me, it should be as big as, say, like, My Best Friend's Wedding or those sorts of movies. Or Muriel's Wedding. Yeah. Just a story about two sisters who have had a shitty childhood. Their mother passed away. The father is absolutely useless. Like, he has this new wife who's an absolute witch of a woman. Like, awful. She's like... Honestly, she should have a broomstick and be flying around. But it's their story, and it's like there's this rift, and then they've discovered that their mother had this family that basically were forcibly disconnected from them, played by Shirley MacLaine as the grandmother who's living in this, what would you call that sort of residential area for elderly, retired people?
Yeah, like a retirement village.
Glorious. I would live there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have Sex and City nights, Cosmos. It looks great. And it's like, without going into detail about the plot, that's the setup. It's them reconnecting with the past and also like kind of making sense of their future together. And Cameron Diaz really lost. Like, she's dyslexic. She has not been able to keep a job. And Toni Collette is all together, and she gives you a big speech at the beginning about why she has these shoes.
Look, if you're not going to wear them, don't buy them. Leave them for somebody who's going to get something out of them.
I get something out of them.
When I feel bad, I like to treat myself. Clothes never look any good. Food just makes me fatter. Shoes always fit.
And it's just a really beautiful story. And the performances are so good. So Shirley MacLaine does get a Golden Globe nomination. But again, the three of them could have easily been in the conversation more for the Oscar. I think Cameron Diaz is so brilliant in this film. Yeah. Playing quite vanity free sort of performance. Like, there's moments where she really, like, she's told an awful lot. You will not be this beautiful forever. And already she's, I don't know what age she is in this film, but she would have been very aware of that, to be choosing a role to do that. Yeah. Wow. I love it. I've such a heart for this movie.
It is. So I'd never seen it until, again, the little Tony festival that we had. And I think, and this is so bad because Also it's bad titling. I don't know. No, I think the title's fine, but the poster and everything, I just had assumed that this was a nothing film, and it's the opposite. It is everything you describe. I don't need to kind of repeat it. But it is... All of the characters are relatable. I mean, I'm none of these people, but I understand Toni's character's hang-ups. I understand Cameron Diaz's character's frustrations. I understand Shirley MacLaine's character's guilt and reflection on the past. And yeah, I think they should have all been in the Oscar conversation, right? Like, I think you could have easily slotted any of them in.
There's one scene in particular with the three of them reflecting on, you know, this one day that they remember vividly about their mother before she passed away. And Shirley MacLaine kind of asked them to talk about it. The way that the three of them who are reminiscing or provoking this conversation for different motivations, how that plays out to me is like so spectacular. Of like seeing three very talented people deliver something really special.
I asked for a puppy, and she got it. So cute. I named him Honey Bun.
Why'd you only have it for one day?
I guess Dad thought it was a bad idea.
Why?
I don't know. I think he thought I was too young.
No.
He was just mad.
About a dog?
About the whole day. He didn't have any idea where we were, and school had called.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah. He was really panicked and really, really mad at her. They had a huge fight.
I don't remember a fight.
You were in your room with a record playing.
I was?
Yeah. I put you in there and turned the music on so you wouldn't hear them.
Why? What were they saying?
He was saying she was unfit. That's the word he used.
Like, it really... the way that, like, Toni Collette corrects Cameron Diaz, and then Shirley MacLaine's like, oh, why does that matter? And you realise why that matters, because there's a question of, like, how did the mother die? Yeah. And then they're all there to support each other, but they're not crying or holding or hugging or, you know, they're just reflecting. I think it's really gorgeous, and I don't think we get that very often in a movie.
No, I would recommend it to anyone. I think it is fun and thoughtful, and it just does everything you want. I mean, heart. What kind of films are heartwarming or just heartfelt, maybe is a better way of putting it. And this really is everything. It's really terrific. And again, Toni is, I don't know, an every woman, but I mean,
I think she is
a successful every woman until she makes some changes in her life. Again, it's not the same every woman we have in The Sixth Sense. It's not the same every woman we have in any of the other Muriel's Wedding, any other time where we kind of have her. I think Toni is the ultimate every woman, and I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as a huge, huge compliment.
Yeah. I just wanted to do a cover of another Whitney song, which is actually Shaka Khan, I'm Every Woman, It's All on Me. Maybe that's what she does do. That will be her audition piece for something else. Okay, there are so many movies we could talk about, and I would be delighted to, but we're not going to. we have other things to be doing.
This was hard. I think this is the hardest it's ever been to hack it down to a few, because there's so many things we could talk about, and we also like for different reasons, and that's exciting.
Although you laughed at this earlier, Dream Horse, a charming movie about a horse
going
to the races.
Well,
I love it. She does a Welsh accent. So many. Sorry, that's not even on the top of my list of things. We didn't get to talk about The Hours.
Of course. The Hours. Nightmare Alley, which has just come out, and as of today, as we're recording, nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars.
Okay, so I'm asking you questions then.
Yeah.
And what's your prize going to be?
I want
Hereditary Immersive Theatre, coming right up, 1 ticket. Just you and Toni at a dinner table.
Okay. Oh my god, that sounds so painful, but I am intrigued. Either that, or as you say, her singing "I'm Every Woman."
Or you can get a Toni doll to go with your Angela Bassett doll.
I would like a life-size Toni doll. Well, I think I would find that really comforting, actually.
which Toni would you pick?
You know what? I want actually to spend a week in the retirement village of In Her Shoes with Shirley, Cameron, and Toni, and we're going to be sipping cocktails by the pool. I'm going to get my tits out alongside Cameron. We're just going to be having such a nice time because it just feels so wholesome and lovely. And
you'll find yourself a DILF or two.
God, I'm so excited. They were all DILFs when I watched it.
Oh no, these are like. Anyway,
DILFs?
sorry, that's ages. I was about to say they were elderly, but there are some handsome men there. Okay, so before we get into the quiz proper, I asked you what were your top 3 performances in the hours, and I've done the same. Now, for you to get bonus points, even before you get started, I want you to name who would be in my top 3. And if you can get them in an order, I'll be very impressed. And then I'll give you a go. I'll give yours a go.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's fun. Right, okay.
I have them written down here, guys, so we're not fooling anyone.
Okay, so if I'm going to try for 3 stabs, and I'm going to try and get them all, and then I can order them if I've got them correct, I guess. So, in the top 3, I think you have the subject of our podcast, Toni Collette.
Correct. She is phenomenal in this movie.
I think you will have Ed Harris.
As a gay man dying of AIDS, do you know me at all?
No, you don't then.
No, sorry, I don't have him.
Okay.
He's grand and he is very good. He's amazing, to be honest, but it's just not the sort of performance
I feel confident you won't have Julianne Moore.
No.
I'm less sure about Nicole Kidman.
By a nose.
By a nose, Nicole Kidman. No, I think then. Miranda Richardson.
She would be close to my top 3, but no, she's terrific again in this movie.
Yeah, so much people are. Okay. Well, I'm not doing very well already, so I've already fucked it. Alice and Janney?
No, good.
Okay, but so Nicole Kidman is in here then. No, what in the fuck? Okay, Meryl.
Yeah,
okay.
Meryl, yeah.
I don't know, just because of if you've listened to any of this podcast before, you will understand why I thought that Michael wouldn't have Meryl.
No, but I love Meryl Streep. I just think she gets too many parts. The Hours, she is like this is one of my favorite Meryl Streep performances. I think she's exceptional in this film.
Okay. Good. Then that only really leaves Jeff Daniels.
No, again, he's probably
he's
4 or 5.
Really
he's
good,
so good
really good in this film.
I'm dying in this town, Leonard.
Leonard?
Yeah, Stephen Delane. Love him.
Boring, Michael. Come on.
Aww.
Okay.
So you got 2 out of 100 guesses.
No. So I don't even think you could gauge that. Okay, but let me try and order them. So we've got Stephen, we've got Meryl, and we've got Toni. So I think Stephen is in 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with how I then think it should be. I think you've got Toni in 2nd and Meryl in 1st.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, wicked.
Okay, so you will have Meryl in there, right?
Yes.
So Meryl's in your top 3. Tony's in your top 3?
Yes.
And Jeff Daniels.
See, this is where it gets trickier anyway, so you already can probably imagine the order. I really struggled for 3rd. I'm going to say no, because I don't have him written here. So no, but to be honest, this is where it gets tricky.
Okay, well then, Miranda Richardson or Ed Harris, because you sounded like you loved Ed Harris.
Not Ed Harris. Miranda Richardson again was maybe. But I have actually put Nicole.
Atkins.
No, I have put Nicole as
I love
3rd.
Eileen Atkins as the flower person.
But I think on some days I might watch Nicole in this and go, not so sure. But
she's good.
She is so
really
good, and I think the the reason she's so good is because only really she could do what she is doing there. There's an iciness to it, a hollowed out thing that she's bringing that in some moments are hypnotic.
Yeah.
So I therefore think the other two that we've named are superior. One in particular, but I still think she's amazing because she's doing something very different from, say, the other two, Toni and Meryl, who are my 2 in 1.
Yeah. Oh, great. Okay, well, we know each other well, and we have very similar... We have a couple in our third place.
Perfect. But we have... we also have the same number 1 then, because...
Oh, yeah, Meryl.
Oh, and number 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, Meryl Streep in this is like undeniable. It's Meryl at the best of Meryl using Merylness to the best effect.
How she was out of all the Oscar nominations and wins and whatever, this was not even non-nominated.
And then this year, Julianne Moore is nominated twice, nominated for The Hours. Probably shouldn't have been nominated for Far From Heaven. Definitely should have been.
Yeah, amazing.
Whereas Meryl Streep just had such a strong year. She had Adaptation as well, which is arguably her other best work, or certainly one of them. So, but yeah, love that. Meryl is the best performance in The Hours, but the one of the top, the leading 3 who was not nominated for the Oscar.
Okay, so let's properly get into it now. It's something that I really enjoyed that you did previously with me in the Imelda Staunton episode, and we're going to listen to some tunes, and I want you to tell me what is the film.
Oh, good. And surely there's going to be a theme to this. You're not just going to suddenly be playing me tunes. So, Toni Collette.
No, they're going to be songs I love. No, they're songs from Toni Collette films, and I need you to name the film.
Great.
So track number 1.
I don't know. My instinct says Nightmare Alley.
And your instinct would be correct.
Oh, good.
Congratulations.
It's nice. I hadn't actually listened to it, removed from watching the film. It's very moody. I was really unsure until it slipped into... I don't know, it took me there. And then I was like, we must be back in Nightmare Alley, which is probably still in cinemas, and you should check it out because it's really good.
It's a Best Picture film, and Toni is great and sexy, jerks off Bradley Cooper, does little magic tricks, but also at the end comes in as warns him in such she's again in a load of the films we talked about, turns the story to be you are in danger. You stop messing around with that other dirty Australian woman, Kate Blanchett, and that really bland Rooney Mara, and you look after yourself.
Yeah. She is great, and again, very different. That film is terrific. I really, really liked it, and I think Bradley Cooper is sensational. So go see.
Okay, so back to the tracks. Number 2. Any guesses? Any thoughts?
I mean, it's really warm. It's giving me fuzzies, but in a nostalgic way, which doesn't quite make sense. So I'm therefore not sure if I've seen it.
Oh, I'm sure you have.
Okay, so it's probably one we've spoken about. No, okay.
Well, maybe you've not seen this movie, I don't know.
But based on what I'm thinking, I'm going to go for Emma.
Yeah, Rachel Portman, Emma.
Yeah, okay, I've not seen that version of Emma, but I would have known that was Rachel Portman just from listening to it, because I thought it was Chocolat when you put it on.
Oh, well then, yeah. Oh, poor Rachel. No, Rachel's great.
Oh, no, I love it. That's not a diss, I just knew.
Oh my God.
I love Chocolat. This is the Chocolat podcast.
Oh my God, one day we'll get to. Number 3. Any guesses?
Okay, so it's quite erratic but bouncy. Normally, erratic strings, I would have gone for something like Hereditary, but it's not sinister enough, I don't think, for it to be Hereditary. I got too much character, but it has that murder mystery vibe, so I'm going to say Knives Out.
Correct, yeah. I think it's such a great
that
score.
is good, yeah.
Okay, number 4.
I mean, if that's not one film, then I'd be really surprised because that feels very of its time. Surely that must be in between the ABBA tracks and Muriel's wedding.
No!
Is it Corsi?
No!
Is it In Her Shoes then?
No, you know well. In Her Shoes is more sentimental.
Yeah, hold on. I'm gonna get it. Fucking hell, how is that? But no, because that's like beach, right? So is it set at the beach? Oh my god, is it Connie and Carla?
It's Connie and Carla, which is aiming for all the camp. Like, it's just aiming like anything campy. The story of Connie and Carla is of these two friends who are women who want to make it big, witness a murder, like it's based on some Like It Hot, I guess, and but they have to be men performing as female impersonators, so drag queens, to escape, but also to make a living, and they become stars. And it's questionable in so many different ways. It's got Debbie Reynolds coming up for no reason. It's a hoot, but also not at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, this is the last one.
Okay.
So please guess this.
I don't actually know for any of these on hearing them, but this one I get. So I'm describing what I get, and then I'll find myself there. I get magic. I get family film. It's got.
It's a very sensual way to find an answer. I love it.
It has too much kind of bounce and spirit for it not to be something kind of mischievous.
I'm going to tell you that you're totally in the wrong,
totally
wrong field of. It is. I will say this sequence, which this music is from, is heavily dependent on the music and the movement that we see, and it is not something you probably have expected to see in this point in the film. It's one of her more recent performances, and she's a supporting person and not involved in the movement.
Okay. Well, assuming it's not Dream Horse, but she's of course not supporting in Dream Horse. She plays the horse.
She is the Dream Horse.
She is, ladies and gentlemen, Toni Collette is the Dream Horse.
Oh no, I know you've seen this film because we've spoken about
more
this.
Recent. Oh, okay. So not a family film, but equally it's strange. I'm thinking of Ending Things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was like,
well, I don't think that's the name of the film.
No, it is.
Yeah.
What a movie. Yes, that is a musical sequence which kind of is like a Roger and Hammerstein's dream sequence in their musicals. Before cutting to see Jesse Plemons sing on stage, and Tony's just sitting there not singing, and she could easily sing.
Okay, I'm placing it now. That makes sense.
Yes, when they go to the school, love this movie. Really like the book. Loved it. Love it. Okay, so you've done really well. You are getting a one-way ticket to see the ladies. Bring those Cosmos. You can watch them just like that. I'm sure Shirley MacLaine will be delighted to see you. Super. Okay. So this is, I find, really tricky with Toni looking to the future. Mainly because I feel like even though she may not ever hit, say, the heights of a Cate Blanchett or Meryl Streep, and that in terms of fame and whatever, will be working. She'll always be working. I don't know what it is about her that makes me think like people will always want to work with her. She's dependable. She's amazing.
Yeah.
Having said all of that, like, what are you hoping for her future? And I don't know what categories that we're going to talk about. What sequel we'd have of one of her films, a remake of a film that we know, and team her up with someone. What one would you want to start with?
Sure. Well, firstly, before I go into one, I think this is the most confidently I'll say that Toni Collette will win an Oscar, but I think most likely for supporting actress.
Yeah.
But if we then look it's basically if it's within the next 10 years it's supporting. If it's 20 years down the line it'll be lead. I don't know why I think that, but I really genuinely do see it happening, even though she's only had one Oscar nomination and it hasn't now been for 22 years.
So long. Yeah.
But I do think she has the respect and people do love her. But anyway, I'm going to kick off with a sequel. So if we're kind of looping back to things we've spoken about, I kind of have two answers here, so I'll just kind of touch on them both. I would want more of In Her Shoes. I would want to go back there, but I don't think we're necessarily going to get anything from going back there per se. So actually a film you mentioned, Japanese Story, because, and again I'm not going to spoil it so I'm only going to touch upon it, but because of where the film ends, I think they actually could continue and look at what that has done to her down the line, and a really interesting two-hander. I mean, it would never happen for a film of that nature, but we've seen it with now The Souvenir and The Souvenir Part 2. Maybe we can have Japanese Story and Japanese Story Part 2 in a strange continuation of this woman's journey.
Or even I'd say like before, like Sunrise, Sunset, they're similar in terms of, I guess Souvenir is just is doing something much broad. Like it could be a quiet film.
Yeah, no, that's a good way of putting it.
Japan
I'm just thinking of sequels to deep indie films. But yeah, that's a good shout. But I think we could see more of her, and it has that kind of meditative quality that I would almost want to carry on and see what happens and how she deals with, let's say, a predicament she finds herself in at the end or towards the end of Japanese Story.
I love that. Yeah. Mine is similarly, in terms of what you're saying, I don't want to spoil the ending of I'm thinking of ending things, even though the title may indicate what happens. But Toni Collette plays the mother of Jesse Plemons, who is the lead character. And in some ways, that's actually, there's so many things you can take away from that movie.
Yeah.
But in many ways, you could see it as him seeing the world. So he might be the main character, but it's Jessie Buckley, who is an Oscar nominee now, is also basically part of his being the main character. Anyway, that's a long-winded way to say the sequel could swing around and focus on his parents or parent. And I don't know anything about where that would go, but Toni Collette and Charlie Kaufman working together more. And I think what Toni Collette does in that first film, where she's kind of like a grotesque sort of gargoyle, sort of like, she's like disgusting, but she's also endearing, and she's delighted, and she's sad. She's me. She's me. I saw a lot of me in her. I just think she's wonderful. So I'd love to see that fleshed out more.
Okay, nice. Let's next do. Let's team them up with someone or put them in a kind of different sort of film. So, based on the success of her last year, I assume she's going to be propelled to be doing a lot more work. And that is writer-director Emerald Fennell, who gave us Promising Young Woman, a really exciting debut film. And I would want to see something similarly exciting for a leading role for Toni in that. A character who is prickly, but obviously I'm not looking at her being Carey Mulligan's character, but prickly, complex, but incredibly contemporary. And I think that would be a really nice fit to see her get to do something fresh. I think that's the key thing here. Something really fresh and exciting that people go into and are knocked over by. And I can just see it working. I can see her doing exactly what Emerald Fennell would want. She would get the brief.
And because she'd worked with so many, I don't know, she like throws herself into projects. I think she would fit really well. Mine is a bit strange, maybe, but listening to interviews with her, she talks a lot about wanting to direct herself. So I'm teaming Toni up with herself.
Yeah.
And she doesn't even have to star in the film.
Oh, I love it.
But she's also attached to adapt in terms of screenwriting and direct a novel, a film version of the novel Riders and Lovers. But really, I'd have her do whatever she wants. She seems to have such an ability, like you touched upon this before about talking about mothers, that she'd always either selects or develops with the writer or director like the character, so they're never one-dimensional. Like she's never played a one-dimensional person.
Yeah.
Even in, say, the hours where she has a few minutes, she is a fully fleshed person.
Oh, sure.
And I just think that sort of ability being brought in as a director, writer, like basically a filmmaker telling a story would be so good. So I would choose partnering Toni with Toni.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. And then finally, we will remake something that she's not been in, or recast and put Toni into a role. And I guess the healthiest way to approach this question is to recast or reboot something you think could be more successful with Toni in it. I love this film, so therefore it's not that I want that to happen, but when the idea came into my head, I couldn't shake it. So maybe it's linked to the last thing, an exciting voice who's always doing interesting things. And I thought of Diablo Cody, and then I thought of her as, and it could be one of two really, but young adult, or Tully, so playing Charlize Theron's character in either of those films. I think I'm more swaying towards seeing her doing young adult, this kind of freewheeling, barreling towards a problematic place character. I think we've seen her tread in that before, but I would like to see her really get to go for it. But seeing that, I can also see her in Tully in a very different part, but equally complex and exciting. I love both of those films, and therefore I wouldn't want to change them, but I would be fascinated to see Toni in those parts, but especially young adult.
So I'm picking a movie which I absolutely love, but it's from the past, so I feel like it can have another life, like Nightmare Alley, and that is now Voyager, which is a Bette Davis joint, where she plays, it's basically a Cinderella story. She plays this spinster sister who is up in her room all the time, and her family are like, oh, what the fuck's happening with her? And she meets the doctor, who's like, no, like, it's your self-esteem, like, there's other mental health issues basically at play here. So she goes and she works on herself, and she goes on a cruise where she meets a dreamy man, and I should say, before she goes on the cruise, she's been with the beautified, or what's the word, a glow up. She's had the definition of a glow up, but she is still very vulnerable and has a lot going on, and meets this man and all this stuff, and he's married to a woman who is doesn't love him back, to put a long story short. And it's in some ways has some of the same tendencies as something like Japanese Story for her, or Muriel's Wedding, about leaving and finding herself. And I just think that would be such a satisfying sort of role to see her in, particularly if it was directed by who I'm hoping would do it, Todd Haynes.
Oh, perfect. Now I am sold.
She would be, like, after Nightmare Alley, like, how glamorous she is, and just everything about it. I would go and watch this movie, and if I had all the money in the world, I'd be putting it all on this.
Yeah, I think that's a fucking stunning idea.
But yes, as you were saying, like, I'm not nervous at all about her career. I'm excited. Like, I feel so lucky to have seen so many of the films we talked about in the cinema and enjoyed it and share it with friends and family, and just like, oh, she's like given so much, I think, and I hope she feels that. I'm sure she does, regardless of Oscars or anything, even success, financial success. Like, yeah.
I think she's incredible, and she's the actor for anyone to love who may be more allergic to performers who are acting. So I would say for people who have issues with someone like Meryl, I think Toni Collette is the perfect counterpart, antidote to that, because I think, and she talks about this herself, but I find it to be very present anyway. I didn't need to hear her say it for me to see it on screen, is that she's just in the moment, and it feels incredibly natural, even as varied and outside of herself her parts are. So I think a lot of people probably have her as their favourite, and rightly so.
Yeah, and she doesn't need to drink prop wine to get drunk.
Slating Gaga.
Yeah, well, I can't pick on Kate Blanchett or Meryl
She
Streep
just
anymore.
didn't get nominated. Why would you do that? Just kidding.
Yeah, she'll be on the podcast next. Does anyone know who Lady Gaga is?
Not I.
Not the Academy voters. Well, super. What a joy to talk about Toni Collette. Next time, we're talking about our last in this little mini season of one-time Oscar nominees, and we are joined by a special guest, which will be very exciting. So yeah, I cannot wait. So where can people find us, Scott?
So please come and find us. We love to be found. You can grab us by email if you so wish. You can get her. You can get her at, or you can get us at don'tknowherpod@gmail.com. Or please come and find us on Twitter and Instagram at don'tknowher_pod.
Terrific. So thank you, everybody. Do subscribe, like, share, all the above.
Share? Where?
Snap out of it. Yeah. So delighted to be sharing the love of Toni with you. And yeah, have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.